Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today we're going to learn a lot about CSS Grid, a resource that helps us to create areas or layouts for our web page, okay? So I am Matheus Battisti. I will appreciate a lot if you press the like button and also subscribe to this channel to help me to spread this video to a lot of people so they also can learn web development. So let's go. I have here a little theory about CSS Grid, some slides to learn the fundamentals of this resource. And after that, we are going to the practice, okay? So what is CSS Grid? It is a two-dimensional layout system introduced in CSS 3, okay, the version 3 of CSS. So like Flexbox, Grid help us to create layouts. And here in this channel we also have a video about Flexbox. So after this class you can watch this video that I teach you about Flex, okay? And it allows you to organize elements into rows and columns, making it easier to create complex and structured layouts. So we have the layout from a software like Figma, and we want to reproduce this on the VS Code on our editor with HTML and CSS. So in the past, we had a lot of work to do this. We had to work with position, with a lot of display rules, with floats, and now with Flexbox and Grid CSS, we can do it like magic with a little of effort, okay? And we have some advantages of Grid CSS. We have detailed control, offers precise control over the positioning and sizing of the elements on the page. So here we can say that we have a bigger column or a smaller column following the proportion of our layout, okay? Enables exact alignments of items, allowing them to occupy specific areas of the grid. So we can name some areas to elements. So we can bind some areas with elements of our HTML. And it enables exact alignment of items, allowing them to occupy specific areas of the grid. Simplified responsive layout, so it also helps us with responsiveness or to adapt our websites to mobile phones, to tablets, to small laptops. And we have also adaptive design. Facilitates the creation of designs that automatically adapt to different screen sizes and device, reduce the need for complex media queries to adjust the layout on mobile devices or smaller screens. So we're also going to have an example with media query, and you're going to see in practice that is a lot easier than the conventional media queries that we use without this resource. Okay, so here we have some concepts that you must understand to learn grid. We have the container, it's the parent element with display grid. So we apply this rule like in the flex box, okay? Defines the context within which the grid is applied. Inside this container, we have the grid items, direct children of the grid container. So the elements inside the parent element. These are the elements positioned within the grid. Rows and columns. So we're also going to have this. If you pay attention on the website that we visit, you're going to see that they have a pattern. Not all of them, but the majority of the websites have a pattern, like e-commerce. You have the products displayed by a grid. So we can reproduce this with Grid CSS with a minimal effort of coding, with a minimal effort and a few lines of CSS, okay? The grid is composed of horizontal rows and vertical columns. They allow you to organize items in a two-dimensional structure. And we also have some measurement units like pixel, EM, RM that we have in CSS. Here we have some special units that are used only in grid, okay? So we have FR, fraction, represents a fraction of available space, so we can divide our layout by fractions. Min-max, this rule defines a minimum and a maximum size for rows and columns, so we can specify the minimum size of element and the maximum size. It's very useful when we have a size that the element cannot be smaller than we must configure or greater than some value, okay? And automatically adjust the size based on the content, okay? So it's also a good way to define the size. So now we're ready to the practice, and let's go to the editor. And to help us to just work with CSS, I have this repository, okay, with the starting code, our template to this class. So you can download, the link is down below in the description. And we're going to use this HTML here, okay, and also some of this CSS. Just this 30 lines here that are base styles to differentiate the elements and the areas of our layout, because we are going to learn a lot of concepts. So I divide the screen by these concepts, okay? So I will open here in my editor. Here I have the files ready, okay? All of the HTML, just copy and paste here. And the CSS with just the 30 first lines, okay? I erased some lines here, just 2 lines, because they add grid and I want to display to you, okay? But it's okay if you copy the first 30 lines, okay? So let's open here in our browser. And here is the starting template that I gave to you, okay? So if you have this in your screen, you are ready to go, okay? And before we start the course, this class, I want to show you my Udemy course about HTML and CSS. It's a complete course with more than 10 hours of length, okay, with a lot of projects that will cover all of the most important concepts about HTML and CSS. So you can take this course with a special price, a special offer that I made to you. It's here in the description, and you also can go to that page and see the concepts and the content that you are going to learn, the students and what the students are saying about this course, okay? So if you learn something from this class, probably you're going to learn a lot with this course, okay? It's the next step to master HTML and CSS. So let's go here to the CSS Grid class. I will just put the browser side by side with the editor to make it easier to you to follow the class. So guys, here I have the editor and the browser, okay? So how do we start? We have here the first step with this section, with this class basic, okay? So let's apply grid to that. Here we have a base style that just defines some elements here to see the behavior of grid when we apply, okay? So the parent element is with that gray background and the items with that blue background, okay? So here I will apply to basic the display grid rule, okay? So nothing happens. It's different than the flex blocks rule, okay? That the elements start to be side by side. Here in grid, nothing happens if we don't define the areas, okay? So now that we saw that, I will apply to all the grid containers that are the parent elements that we have in all of the examples, the display grid class, okay? So now all of our areas here have the grid display. And another thing that I want to show to you is how to space elements. Okay, you can use gap like in the flexbox to space the elements, so we don't need to work with margins. Okay, and we apply to the parent element. So gap 10 pixels, we space the elements by 10 pixels. Okay, it's a nice rule because most of the grids that we create have or will have space between the elements. Okay, so now let's go to our second example and see some rules that are often used with grid. Okay, and here we have this class repeat min max. Okay, so let's get this class and paste here. Okay, but before that I will show to you how to define fractions on our basic grid. So most of the times you are going to have some number of columns that you want to put in your grid. And how can we define that? We use the rule grid template columns. Okay, and with that measure fraction, we define the columns like that: one fraction, one fraction, one fraction. So now our first div here will have 3 columns. So the number of the fractions define the number of the columns. And if I increase some value of these fractions, it will be wider than the other ones because it's like a fraction. You have one fraction here, and here, and here you have twice the size of a fraction. Okay, so let's back to the one here, and maybe you are in doubt about the height. We can set the height with grid template rows to define a height to the row or rows we have here. Like you can see, we have 2 rows, and if I define 150 pixels and save here, now we have just for the first row this size. Because here we have 2 rows, we can define this 152 times. Now it is applied to both rows. Okay, and we can have different row sizes. So these 2 rules with the display grid will be used a lot of times when you are working with grid. Okay, so now let's go to our second example here. I will create the grid template columns rule here, but I'm going to use the repeat. Here in repeat, we define first the number of the columns, and after that the size of the items. So I want to have four columns, and the size of the item will be 1 fraction. So now I have what you saw here. I have 4 columns, and each item has 1 fraction. So we don't need to repeat like that. But we also can use min max to define the minimum width and the maximum width that the items can have. So if I define 30 pixels to the minimum and 1 fraction to the maximum, now we see the same as before. But if we go here to inspect the elements and try to resize here, you can see that the items will have a minimum width of 30 pixels. Okay, so they don't break line, they just stick to the minimum width that we defined. We also have another rule that is grid auto rows, that we can define a common height for all the rows. Like here, I will define 120 pixels. So now I don't need to define for each row. So this is like is syntax to define the pattern for all the grid. So I repeat each column, I define some width, and I define all the heights of our rows. Okay, so these are resources that we can use. And if you paid attention, you saw that the grid doesn't break the line. Okay, so this may be a problem to you. So now we are going to have this another example that will break the lines. So here I will paste the comment with the for this section. Okay, and we need this class here to work with responsivity. Okay, so how can we achieve that? First, we need to define the same thing, grid template columns, okay, with repeat, but instead of defining this amount of columns, I will write here auto fit. And after that, we can have the size of the items, like with min max. And here I will write 100 pixels, 1 FR. I also can define the height of the rows, like here. Now let's try with 100 pixels. And as you can see here, because we don't have the number of the columns, we are getting a lot of items in the first row. And what can limit this? If I increase the minimum size, like 200. So now I have less items on the first row because they are reaching the limit of our width here, okay? And also with the auto fit, they break the lines to fit the layout. So if we try here, here we have the auto fit with 3 columns, now with 2 columns, and now with 1 column. So maybe this is the best approach to work with responsivity, to make our grids work to all the resolutions. Okay, so let's go to the next here. This one to work with the position of the items. Okay, so here we can grab that class overlapping, and we can start with the same rules as before, like grid template. I will define some fractions, okay, and I will have some size for the rows, okay. So we get this thing here, okay. Now let me see if I got that. We just have 4 items, okay. Sorry, it's with 2 columns because here I defined the columns by pixels again. I need to change to rows here. So now I have the behavior that I want. Okay, so in Flex we also have the rules to change the items themselves, the on position. Okay, we don't depend on the parent element. So here in Grid we also have some way to do this. So as you can see here, we have some classes to each items. Item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. I will grab this one, and with the rule grid dash column, I can define the starting column and ending column of my element. So if I define 1/3, I'm saying that I want my element here starting in the first line and ending in the third line. So it doesn't get the third line, it ends on the third line, okay? And I can do this with the row. So I can start on the first one and end on the second one. So here I have the same behavior. And if I try to end in the third row, now I occupy 2 rows with my item, okay? And if I grab the item 2 and I try to get all the columns, like 1/4, so I will stop the third one, I just have 3. We have an item occupying all the columns. So with these individual rules, they break the lines, okay? I can get more rows, like 1/5. So the grid, as you can see here, I'm having an overlapping, so if I add a background color RGBA 000.5, I can see that I am overlapping the other elements. And why it happens? Because I don't have more than 2 columns. Okay, so overlapping is a possible situation on grid. So we must have caution when we write the dimensions of an item, because we can end all up on a situation like this. Okay, so now we're going to name it areas. This is a good resource because we can name our areas, so this can vary by the project. Okay, so this is nice because we have different layouts, so we have different name of the areas. Like here we have the header, the menu, content, footer. So I want the header to occupy all the columns, the menu and the content be side by side, but I want to give more focus to the content, so it needs to be greater than the menu. Okay, and the footer will get all the columns like the header. So how can I do this? First, I need to get that class, and here I will define the template areas. So here I am naming the areas. So grid template areas, with strings and lines I define the rows. So instead of doing one fr, I will do header. And instead of giving the size of the rows, I will add another line with the name of the other sections that need to be on the second row, like menu and content. And after that, I need another row for the footer. Okay, so this is my area. Oh, those are my areas. So if I save that, the layout changed, but it's not like I want, but it's the beginning. Okay, I need to define now the template columns because I want to increase the size of the second column. So 1fr, 2fr, and we have another change here. The second column is larger than the first one, but we are not achieving what we want. Okay, and now I need to name each of those divs with the name that I gave in the areas. So I need to get the header class, the menu class, the content class, and the footer class. But how can I name them? They have the same class as the name of the area. This is good. It's what you need, or you should try to achieve every time that you use this resource, because it will be a lot easier to another developer understand what are you doing. Okay, but I need to name it with a rule of grid area. So the first one will be header, this one will be menu, this one will have the name of the content, and this one is the footer. Okay, so now they have names, and now they behave like the layout. Okay, so this is the beginning of a structure of a layout. Okay, maybe this is what you are going to do when you are starting a project with grid. So the next resource is grid with nested grid. And what is this? Is when we have a grid inside another grid. So here I have this parent element that have some structure. Okay, so let's define something for here. I will repeat with 2 columns, 1 fraction for each column. Now we have the grid working, but I need to create another grid for that child element called subgrid container. So grab that class, and I can write the rule of display grid here. And now this subgrid is working as a grid, but it needs to have its own structure. Okay, so let's define grid template columns, one afar, one afar, one afar. So here I have 3 columns in the subgrid. Okay, let's get the subitem grid class here. Let's just put a color of orange just to identify what is grid and subgrid. Okay, and here I also have a possibility to give a gap of 10 pixels. Like you see, it's working. If I add more items, they will go to second row, as you can see here. If I don't define rows, we have infinite rows. Okay, I can do this, and we can have the second row, a second column greater than the other ones, like you can see. So subgrids are a possible resource. We can achieve that just by creating another div that is the parent element of some elements with the display grid rule. Okay, so this is not often used on web page, but in some situations you can solve problems with this rule here. Like you can see, we are working with 2 grids in the same element, but one is the parent element and the other one is the one of the child elements. And to complete our class here, I will create another example of the named areas, but now with a media query to adapt the layout to a mobile page, and it will look like a real page. So it's more like a practical example like I wrote here. Okay, so let's practical example here, and let's create another area here for our page layout. So I have the grid template areas, and I will define that what I want here. I have a navbar that is navbar inside the content, and I have another bar that's called a side that can have some content or secondary content, and I have the main content in the middle. So I have 3 columns on my website. Okay, and the header and the footer is the same as the past example. We have then filling all the columns. So let's write this here. I have header, header, header. Now in the content we have nav site main, okay, or maybe nav main aside, because I want the focus on the main content. And to end our layout we have footer, footer, footer. Okay, after the areas we can define the fractions. So grid template columns, 1 fr, 2 fr to give more focus to the main content, 1 fr to the other bar here that we have, the side element. And the template rows will be, with template rows will be automatic to have the own content size as the height. I will put the middle one as 1 fr and the other one as out. In practice, what effects do we have here? Nothing. And why is that? Because we don't have a height defined. When this parent element gets a height, this 1 fr will get all the possible size that it could or it can, just leaving some height to the first and the last column. As you can see here, I will write a 500 height, and now we get a structure more like looking like a website. Okay, so to differentiate the areas, let's put some colors in the elements, and as you can see here, we have then occupying the exact position they need, okay? But it was, but pay attention, this is not right, okay? Because the main content is in the position of the sidebar. So it's why we need to name them. So header will be grid area header, and let's write some color here like 3F51B5, and we have the nav grid area nav background color, let's say F44336 main grid area main background color 2196 F3. And now if we save that, we are going to correct the positions, okay? But let's continue here. Aside grid area aside, let's give color of FF9800, and in the end we have our footer grid area footer background color for CAF50. Now we have the areas colored, okay, and we have here a problem. If we want to see the mobile view here, the areas will stretch or will shrink, okay, but now my main content doesn't have the size I want, and this is not okay for the mobile version. I need to have a columnar or a column layout here. So how can I do this? How can I achieve that column layout? I will write a media carrier with max width, and on the resolution of a tablet like 768 pixels, we want to change how the page layout works, okay? So let's grab the selector, and here we're going to work in this rule first. I need to have just one element in each row because it's how mobile works, okay? We have the content of header, the top of the nav, and so on, okay? So we just need to rename these columns like here. So first we have header, after that we have nav, after that we have aside, after that we have footer. But before we save it, we define here just one fraction, okay? And the rows we can leave auto, and the height we can leave the auto. So they will fill the height by their content. And if we save that, here it doesn't change because we are in a higher resolution, okay? But if we inspect here, let's see, if we resize this, now we have how we want to show to our mobile users our site. And this is how you can apply the media queries to grid named areas, né? The resource called grid template areas. So guys, this is it. Hope you enjoyed, and if you learned something, please press the like button and subscribe to this channel. This will help YouTube to share these videos to more people so they can learn web development, and you will be, and when I launch a new video, you will be warned by YouTube to watch that new video, okay? So before we end here, before we say goodbye, I want to recommend you again my course about HTML and CSS. It's a full course with a lot of projects. You will learn a lot. If you learn here, you can continue improve your skills in web development with this course. So the link is down below in the description section. You can grab your discount, your special offer, and I'm waiting you there to help you to improve your skills in web development. So guys, this is it. Hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video.